Chapter 4, Love Language Number 1, Words of Affirmation. Mark Twain once said, "I can live for 2 months on a good compliment." If we take Twain literally, 6 compliments a year would have kept his emotional love tank at the operational level. Your spouse will probably need more. One way to express love emotionally is to use words that build up. Solomon, author of the ancient Hebrew wisdom literature, wrote, "The tongue has the power of life and death." Many couples have never learned the tremendous power of verbally affirming each other. Verbal compliments, or words of appreciation, are powerful communicators of love. They are best expressed in simple, straightforward statements of affirmation, such as, "You look sharp in that suit." "Do you ever look incredible in that dress? Wow." "I really like how you're always on time to pick me up at work." "Thanks for getting the babysitter lined up tonight. I want you to know that I don't take that for granted." "You can always make me laugh." What would happen if the emotional climate of a marriage if the husband and wife heard such words of affirmation regularly? Several years ago, I was sitting in my office with my door open. A lady walking down the hall said, "Have you got a minute?" "Sure, come in." She sat down and said, "Dr. Chapman, I have got a problem. I can't get my husband to paint our bedroom. I've been after him for 9 months. I have tried everything I know, and I can't get him to paint it." My first thought was, "Lady, you are in the wrong place. I am not a paint contractor." But I said, "Tell me about it." She said, "Well, last Saturday was a good example. You remember how pretty it was? Do you know what my husband did all day long? He was cleaning out his computer files." "So what did you do?" "I went into there and said, 'Dan, I don't understand you. Today would have been a perfect day to paint the bedroom, and here you are working on the computer.'" "So did he paint the bedroom?" I inquired. "No, it's still not painted. I don't know what to do." "Let me ask you a question," I said. "Are you opposed to computers?" "No, but I want the bedroom painted." "Are you certain that your husband knows that you want the bedroom painted?" "I know he knows," she said. "I have been after him for 9 months." "Let me ask you one more question. Does your husband ever do anything good?" "Like what?" "Oh, like taking the garbage out, or putting gas in the car, or paying the electric bill, or running to the store to get milk and toilet paper." "Yes," she said, "he does some of those things." "Then I have 2 suggestions. 1, don't ever mention painting the bedroom again." I repeated, "Don't ever mention it again." "I don't see how that's going to help," she said. "Look, you just told me that he knows that you want the bedroom painted. You don't have to tell him anymore. He already knows." The second suggestion I have is that the next time your husband does anything good, give him a verbal compliment. If he takes the garbage out, say, "Dan, I want you to know that I really appreciate you taking the garbage out." Don't say, "About time you took the garbage out. The flies were going to carry it out for you." If you see him pay the electric bill, put your hand on his shoulder and say, "Dan, I really appreciate you paying the electric bill. I hear there are husbands that don't do that, and I want you to know how much I appreciate it." Or, "I really appreciated you running out to the store when I had to finish that project." Every time he does anything good, give him a verbal compliment. I don't see how that's going to get the bedroom painted. said, "You asked for my advice. You have it. It's free." She wasn't very happy with me when she left. 3 weeks later, however, she came back into my office and said, "It worked!" She had learned that verbal compliments are far greater motivators than nagging words. I'm not suggesting verbal flattery in order to get your spouse and to do something you want. The object of love is not getting something you want, but doing something for the well-being of the one you love. It is a fact, however, that when we receive affirming words, we are far more likely to be motivated to reciprocate and to do something our spouse desires. Encouraging words. The 5 love languages. Giving verbal compliments is only one way to express words of affirmation to your spouse. Another dialect is encouraging words. The word encourage means to inspire courage. All of us have areas in which we feel insecure. We lack courage, and that lack of courage often hinders us from accomplishing the positive things that we would like to do. The latent potential within your spouse is his or her areas of insecurity may await your encouraging words. Allison has always liked to write. Late in her college career, she took a few courses in journalism. She quickly realized that her excitement about writing exceeded her interest in history, which had been her academic major. It was too late to change majors, but after college, and especially before the first baby, she wrote several articles. She submitted one article to a magazine, but when she received a rejection slip, she never had the courage to submit another. Now that the children were older, she had more time to contemplate. Allison was again writing. Keith, Allison's husband, had paid little attention to Allison's writing in the early days of their marriage. He was busy with his own profession and trying to make a place for himself in the world. In time, however, Keith had realized that life's deepest meanings is not found in the accomplishments, but in relationships. He had learned to give more attention to Allison and her interests, so it was quite natural one night for him to pick up one of Allison's articles and read it. When he finished, he went into the den where Allison was reading a book. With great enthusiasm, he said, "I hate to interrupt your reading, but I have to tell you this. I just finished reading your article on making the most of holidays. Allison, you are a really good writer. This stuff ought to be published. You write clearly, your words paint pictures that I can visualize. You have great ideas. You have to submit this to some magazines." "Do you really think so?" Allison asked hesitantly. "I know so," Keith said. "I'm telling you, this is good." When Keith left the room, Allison did not resume her reading. With the closed book in her lap, she dreamed for 30 minutes about what Keith had said. She wondered if others would view her writing the same way he did. She remembered the rejection slip she had received years ago, but she reasoned that she was a different person now. Her writing was better. She had had more experiences. Before she left her chair to get a drink of water, Allison had made a decision. She would submit her articles to some magazines. She would see if they could be published. Keith's encouraging words were spoken many years ago. Allison has had numerous articles published since then and now has a book contract. She is an excellent writer, but it took the encouraging words from her husband to inspire her to take the first step into the arduous process of getting an article published. Perhaps your spouse has untapped potential in one or more areas of life. That potential may be awaiting your encouraging words. Perhaps she needs to enroll in a course to develop that potential. Maybe he needs to meet some people who have succeeded in that area who can give him insight into the next steps he needs to take. Your words may give your spouse the courage necessary to take that first step. Please note, I am not talking about pressuring your spouse to do something that you want. I am talking about encouraging him to develop an interest that he already has. For example, a wife might pressure her husband to look for a more lucrative job. The wife thinks she's encouraging her spouse, but to him it sounds more like condemnation. But if he has the desire and motivation to seek a better position, her words will bolster his resolve. Until he has that desire, her words will come across as judgmental and guilt-inducing. They express not love, but rejection. If, however, he says, I've been thinking about starting a handyman business on the side, then she has an opportunity to give him words of encouragement. Encouraging words would sound like this. If you decide to do that, I can tell you one thing. You will be successful. That's one of the things I like about you. When you set your mind to something, you do it. If that's what you want to do, I will certainly do everything I can to help you. Thank you. Such words may give him the courage to start drawing up a list of potential clients. Encouragement requires empathy and seeing the world from your spouse's perspective. We must first learn what is important to our spouse. Only then can we give encouragement. With verbal encouragement, we are trying to communicate. I know, I care, I am with you. How can I help? We are trying to show that we believe in him and his abilities. We are giving credit and praise. Most of us have more potential than we will ever develop. What holds us back is often courage. A loving spouse can supply that important catalyst. Of course, encouraging words may be difficult for you to speak. It may not be your primary love language. If you have a pattern of critical and condemning words, it may take great effort for you to learn this second language, but I can assure you that it will be worth the effort. Kind words. Love is kind. If then we are to communicate love verbally, we must use kind words. That has to do with the way we speak. The same sentence can have two different meanings depending on how you say it. The statement, I love you, when said with kindness and tenderness, can be a genuine expression of love. But what about, I love you? The question mark changes the whole meaning of those three words. Sometimes our words say one thing, but our tone of voice says another. We are sending double messages. Our spouse will usually interpret our message based on our tone of voice, not the words we use. I would be delighted to wash dishes tonight, said in a snarling tone, will not be received as an expression of love. On the other hand, we can share pain, sadness, and even anger in a kind manner, and that will be an expression of love. I felt disappointed and hurt that you didn't offer to help me this evening, said with gentle directness, can be an expression of love. The person speaking wants to be known by her spouse. She is taking steps to build intimacy by sharing her feelings. She is asking for an opportunity to discuss a hurt in order to find healing. The same words expressed with a loud, harsh voice will not be an expression of love, but an expression of condemnation and judgment. The manner in which we speak is exceedingly important. An ancient saga once said, "A soft answer turns away anger." When your spouse is angry and upset and lashing out words of heat, if you choose to be loving, you will not reciprocate with additional heat, but with a soft voice. You will receive what he is saying as information about his emotional feelings. You will let him tell you of his hurt, anger, and perception of events. You will seek to put yourself in his shoes and see the events through his eyes, and then express softly and kindly your understanding of why he feels that way. If you have wronged him, you will be willing to confess the wrong and ask for forgiveness. If your motivation is different from what he is reading, you will be able to explain your motivation kindly. You will seek understanding and reconciliation and not prove your own perception as the only logical way to interpret what has happened. That is mature love, love to which we aspire if we seek a growing marriage. Love doesn't keep a score of wrongs. Love doesn't bring up past failures. None of us are perfect. In marriage, we do not always do the best or right thing. We have sometimes done and said hurtful things to our spouses. We cannot erase the past. We can only confess it and agree that it was wrong. We can ask forgiveness and try to act differently in the future. Having confessed my failure and asked forgiveness, I can do nothing more to mitigate the hurt it may have caused to my spouse. When I have been wronged by my spouse and she has painfully confessed it and requested forgiveness, I have the option of justice or forgiveness. If I choose justice and seek to pay her back or make her pay for her wrongdoing, I am making myself the judge and she the felon. Intimacy becomes impossible. If, however, I choose to forgive, intimacy can be restored. Forgiveness is the way of love. I am amazed by how many individuals mess up every new day with yesterday. They insist on bringing in today the failures of yesterday, and in doing so, they pollute a potentially wonderful present. I can't believe you did that. I don't think I'll ever forget it. You can't possibly know how much you hurt me. I don't know how you can sit there so smudgely after you've treated me that way. You ought to be crawling on your knees, begging me for forgiveness. I don't even know if I can ever forgive you. Those are not the words of love, but of bitterness and resentment and revenge. The best thing we can do with failures of the past is to let them be history. Yes, it happened. Certainly it hurt, and it still may hurt, but he has acknowledged his failure and asked you for forgiveness. We cannot erase the past, but we can accept it as history. We can choose to live today free from the failures of yesterday. Forgiveness is not a feeling, it is a commitment. It is a choice to show mercy, not to hold the offense up against the offender. Forgiveness is an expression of love. I love you, I care about you, and I choose to forgive you. Even though my feelings of hurt may linger, I will not allow what has happened to come between us. I hope that we can learn from this experience. You're not a failure because you have failed. You are my spouse, and together we will go on from here. Those are the words of affirmation expressed in the dialect of kind words. Humble words. Love makes requests, not demands. When I demand things from my spouse, I become a parent and she the child. It is the parent who tells the 3-year-old what he ought to do, and in fact, what he must do. That is necessary because the 3-year-old does not yet know how to navigate in the treacherous waters of life. In marriage, however, we are equal adult partners. We are not perfect, to be sure, but we are adults and we are partners. If we are to develop an intimate relationship, we need to know each other's desires. If we wish to love each other, we need to know what the other person wants. The way we express those desires, however, is all important. If they come across as demands, we have erased the possibility of intimacy and will drive our spouse away. If, however, we make our needs and desires known in the form of a request, we are giving guidance, not ultimatums. The husband who says, "Could you make that good pasta one of these nights?" is giving his wife guidance on how to love him and thus build intimacy. On the other hand, the husband who says, "Can't we ever have a decent meal around here?" is being whiny, is making a demand, and his wife is likely to fire back, "Okay, you cook." The wife who says, "Do you think it will be possible for you to clean the gutters this weekend?" is expressing love by making a request. But the wife who says, "If you don't get those gutters cleaned out soon, they're going to fall off the house. They already have trees growing out of them," has ceased to love and has become a domineering spouse. When you make a request of your spouse, you are affirming his or her worth and abilities. You are in essence indicating that she has something or can do something that is meaningful and worthwhile to you. When, however, you make demands, you have become not a lover, but a tyrant. Your spouse will feel not affirmed, but belittled. A request introduces the element of choice. Your mate may choose to respond to your request or to deny it, because love is always a choice. That is what makes it meaningful. To know that my spouse loves me enough to respond to one of my requests communicates emotionally that she cares about me, respects me, and wants to do something to please me. We cannot get emotional love by way of demand. My spouse may in fact comply with my demands, but it is not an expression of love. It is an act of fear or guilt or some other emotion, but not love. Thus, a request creates the possibility for an expression of love, whereas a demand suffocates that possibility. Notebooks and more. Words of affirmation are one of the 5 basic love languages. Within that language, however, there are many dialects. We have discussed a few already, and there are many more. Entire volumes and numerous articles have been written on these dialects. All of the dialects have in common the use of words to affirm one's spouse. Psychologist William James said that possibly the deepest human need is the need to feel appreciated. Words of affirmation will meet that need in many individuals. If you are not a man or woman of words, if it is not your primary love language, but you think it may be the love language of your spouse, let me suggest that you keep a notebook titled Words of Affirmation. When you read an article or book on love, record the words of affirmation you find. When you hear a lecture on love or overhear a friend saying something positive about another person, write it down. In time, you will collect quite a list of words to use in communicating love to your spouse. You may also want to try giving indirect words of affirmation. That is, saying positive things about your spouse when he or she is not present. Eventually, someone will tell your spouse, and you will get full credit for love. Tell your wife's mother how great your wife is. When her mother tells her what you said, it will be amplified, and you will get even more credit. Also, affirm your spouse in front of others when he or she is present. When you are given public honor for an accomplishment, be sure to share the credit with your spouse. You may also try your hand at writing words of affirmation. Written words have the benefit of being read over and over again. I learned an important lesson about words of affirmation and love languages years ago in Little Rock, Arkansas, when I visited Mark and Andrea in their home on a beautiful spring day. The setting was idyllic on the outside. Once inside, however, I discovered the truth. Their marriage was in shambles. 12 years and 2 children after the wedding day, they wondered why they had married in the first place. They seemed to disagree on everything. The only thing they really agreed on was that they both loved their children. As the story unfolded, my observation was that Mark was a workaholic who had little time left over for Andrea. Andrea worked part-time mainly to get out of the house. Their method of coping was withdrawal. They tried to put distance between themselves so that their conflicts would not seem as large. But the gauge on both love tanks read empty. They told me that they had been going for marriage counseling, but didn't seem to be making much progress. They were attending my marriage seminar, and I was leaving town the next day. This would likely be my only encounter with them, so I decided to put everything on the table. I spent an hour with each of them separately. I listened intently to both stories. I discovered that in spite of the emptiness of their relationship and their many disagreements, they appreciated certain things about each other. Mark acknowledged Andrea was a good mother, but he continued, "There is simply no affection coming from her. I work my tail off, and she doesn't appreciate it." In my conversation with Andrea, she agreed that Mark was an excellent provider. "But," she complained, "he does nothing around the house to help me, and he never has time for me. What's the use of having nice things if you don't ever get to enjoy them together?" With that information, I decided to focus my advice by making only one suggestion to each of them. I told Mark and Andrea separately that each one held the key to changing the emotional climate of the marriage. That key, I said, is to express a verbal appreciation for the things you like about the other person, and, for the moment, suspending your complaints about the things you do not like. We reviewed the positive comments they had already made about each other, and I helped each of them write a list of those positive traits. Mark's list focused on Andrea's activities with her children, home, and church. Andrea's list focused on Mark's hard work and financial provision for the family. We made the list as specific as possible. Andrea's list looked like this. He is aggressive in his work. He has received several promotions throughout the years. He's a good financial manager. He's always thinking of ways to improve his productivity. He's generous with finances and agrees I can use the money from my job any way I desire. Mark's list looked like this. She keeps our house clean and orderly. She helps the kids with their homework. She cooks dinner about 3 days a week. She teaches first grade Sunday school. She chauffeurs the children to all their activities. I suggested that they add to the list things they noticed in the weeks ahead. I also suggested that twice a week they select one positive trait and express verbal appreciation for it to the spouse. I gave them one further guideline. I told Andrea that if Mark happened to give her a compliment, she was not to give him a compliment at the same time, but rather she should simply receive it and say, "Thank you for saying that." I told Mark the same thing. I encouraged them to do that every week for 2 months, and if they found it helpful, they could continue. If the experiment did not help the emotional climate of the marriage, then they could write it off as another failed attempt. The next day, I got on the plane and returned home. I made a note to follow up with them 2 months later to see what had happened. When I called them in midsummer, I asked to speak to each of them individually. I was amazed to find that Mark's attitude had taken a giant step forward. He had guessed that I had given Andrea the same advice I had given him, but that was all right. He loved it. She was expressing appreciation for his hard work and his provision for the family. She has actually made me feel like a man again. We've got a ways to go, Dr. Chapman, but I really believe we are on the road. When I talked to Andrea, however, I found that she only had taken a baby step forward. She said, "It has improved some, Dr. Chapman. Mark has given me verbal compliments as you suggested, and I guess he is sincere. But he's still not spending any time with me. He is still so busy at work that we never have time together." As I listened to Andrea, I knew that I had made a significant discovery. The love language of one person is not necessarily the love language of another. It was obvious that Mark's primary love language was words of affirmation. He was a hard worker, and he enjoyed his work, but what he wanted most from his wife was to express an appreciation of his work. That pattern was probably set in childhood, and the need for verbal affirmation was no less important in his adult life. Andrea, on the other hand, was emotionally crying out for something else. That brings us to love language number 2. Your turn. What would you most like to hear your spouse say to you? A quick thought about words of affirmation. I vacuum, hold your applause, it comes easy. I, less, don't have to be asked. No need for a nudge or even a pep talk. I'm a self-motivated vacuum virtuoso. Not only that, I make the bed. I'm talking crisp, OCD hospital corners. Now, I don't arrange and fluff countless decorative pillows for no apparent reason, because I'm not crazy, but I make the bed every day. Oh, if you're looking for clean towels, no need to ask. I do laundry, and Leslie knows fresh towels are always waiting. So, come on. Pretty good, right? Then why is the meter on Leslie's love tank hovering below the midpoint? After all, she has to know how much I love her. Look at all the things I'm doing for her, right? Vacuuming? Check. Making the bed? Check. Laundry? Check. So why isn't Leslie feeling the love? You guessed it, because this all occurred before I discovered her love language, words of affirmation. I was speaking from my own love language, which you'll read about in a later chapter, and expecting her to understand it. Oops. As you now know from reading Gary's chapter, it's a common problem. Two loving people missing out on each other's love intentions because they're only speaking their love language, not their partner's. This can be devastating to a person like Leslie who's longing for words of affirmation. After all, you can make all the beds in the house. You can vacuum every room and sweep the front porch too. But if you're not expressing heartfelt compliments or genuine appreciation, their love tank is sure to run empty. Learning this lesson revolutionized our relationship, and it all began with a simple insight. To feel loved, she needs words of affirmation. That meant I needed to learn her love language. How about you? As you read Gary's chapter, did you resonate with the power of loving words? Do you think words of affirmation is your primary love language? Do you feel it deep in your heart? Or are you unsure? Maybe it's your secondary love language. Or, if you're being honest, maybe you're having a tough time seeing what all the fuss is about. Perhaps it's completely foreign love language to you. Well, you don't have to guess. As we mentioned in the introduction, you can find out precisely where you land on the continuum. Take the free quiz at 5lovelanguages.com. And if you want to go deeper, take the full 5 Love Languages Premium Assessment and receive a detailed description and graphic display of how you and those you love experience words of affirmation. Whether it's your primary love language or not, you undoubtedly have a person or two in your life who's eagerly awaiting words of affirmation from you. It could be a spouse, a child, or a friend. That's why we want to help you become more adept at expressing affection with compliments, appreciation, and encouragement. One more thing. You know about my vacuuming and bed making prowess, but I also used to be pretty good at maintaining Leslie's fuel tank in the car. Not anymore. She could care less, especially after going electric. What matters far more than all of this is filling up and maintaining her emotional love tank. Before Gary helped me to learn to speak Leslie's love language, I was trying to fuel a diesel energy with regular gasoline. It was a disaster. Vacuuming, bed making, laundry, sure, I still do it, but it's for me as much as it is for her. What's different now is that I'm focused on becoming a love linguistics for Leslie. I study her dialect, and I do my best to express affection verbally and in writing to keep her love tank as full as possible, and that makes all the difference. Do I ever fail? Miserably, of course, but I keep trying. The more I listen for indicators of her love language, the more love we both find. Oh, speaking of listening, I just heard the buzzer on our washing machine and I need to add softener. Gotta go. If your spouse's love language is words of affirmation, number 1, to remind yourself that words of affirmation is your spouse's primary love language, print the following on a card and put it on a mirror or other place where you will see it daily. Words are important. Words are important. Words are important. For 1 week, keep a written record of all the words of affirmation you give to your spouse each day. You might be surprised how well or how poorly you are speaking words of affirmation. Set a goal to give your spouse a different compliment each day for 1 month. If an apple a day keeps the doctor away, maybe a compliment a day will keep the counselor away. You may want to record these compliments also, so you will not duplicate the statements. Learn to say, "I love you," or other expressions of affirmation in a couple of different languages. Compliment your spouse in the presence of his parents or friends. You will get double credit. Your spouse will feel loved, and the parents will feel lucky to have such a great son-in-law or daughter-in-law. Look for your spouse's strengths and tell her how much you appreciate those strengths. Be specific. I like how you reach out to people at church who don't seem to have anyone to talk to. Or, you're really keeping up with that job search. I know it'll pay off. Occasionally email or text a note of affirmation during the day or when one of you is traveling. Or if you know your spouse is having a hard day, send a link to a funny website. Thank your mate for something they do routinely and wouldn't expect to be complimented for.